Where to live in Kansas City is one of the hardest questions to answer. In this video, we are going to be looking at the top 10 places to live in the Kansas City metro according to the hard stats and data of the housing market. Stay tuned until number 1 because we have never talked about this place on this channel and we need to start right now. The number 10 place to live in Kansas City is going to be Kansas City, Kansas. If you are brand new to the channel or brand new in your search looking up content about Kansas City, what you may not know is that Kansas City is located in 2 states. One city, 2 states. There's a Kansas City, Missouri, which is the home of most of the things like the entertainment downtown, midtown, and those types of areas. And there is Kansas City, Kansas. A lot of people initially think that Kansas City is in Kansas because obviously with the word Kansas in the title of the name of our city, a lot of people think it's Kansas, but we are actually located in both Kansas and Missouri. And in number 10, in terms of the most desirable areas to live in the Kansas City metro, according to the housing stats, is Kansas City, Kansas. If you compare the growth in Kansas City, Kansas from last year, the median price point of a home was $215,000, and now it has jumped up to $225,000, which is a 4.65% increase. If you're talking about the average price, it's jumped up from $237,000 to $269,000, which is a 13% increase in Kansas City, Kansas. KCK is a super diverse place. It has a lot of people of all sorts of backgrounds. It probably has the best Hispanic food in Kansas City metro area. It's got incredible tacos. It's got incredible El Salvadorian food. You've got to go there if you are a foodie because there's this whole, KC taco trail that goes right through Kansas City, Kansas. So if you haven't visited there or if you're not considering living there, I would reconsider because if you combine the median price point and the average price point of homes in Kansas City, Kansas, you get about a 9% year-over-year increase, which is well outpacing the rest of the United States real estate market, but also outpacing the rest of the real estate market here in the Kansas City metro. Some of the other attractions in KCK are going to be the Legends outlets, the Kansas Speedway, the Sporting KC, our soccer team, our MLS soccer team plays out there. So you're not necessarily way far out there, completely isolated. You're actually pretty close depending on where you live in Kansas City, Kansas. Now let's turn to Google Earth to kind of show you this area on a map so that you know exactly where you would be moving to if you chose KCK as your new home. Okay, so let's find KCK on Google Earth here. And you can see as they zoom in, it is this area immediately to the west of the Kansas City metro. This whole area is considered KCK. And you can see it's a little bit longer east to west than it is north to south. However, you can see that you can get really close to the downtown areas. This area where this pin is located is Strawberry Hill, which is a very attractive growing area, especially amongst young people are buying a lot of homes there. Just closed on a home from one of my clients in KCK, so congratulations to them. Caw Point Park is a really cool view. Let's actually see if we can see this view here of Caw Point Park. Is a really neat view right here of the Kansas City skyline. So you can see right here is an incredible view of the Kansas City skyline. I've been there a few times and it's always a really cool area where the Kansas and the Missouri River meets. The other attractions of KCK are going to be out here. So you can see the Kansas Speedway. Children's Mercy Park is where the Sporting KC plays, and then right next to that are the Legends outlets. A lot of people go shopping out there. A lot of people head out there in order to enjoy Sporting KC and to enjoy a race. I don't know anything about NASCAR. I think that there's some pretty big deal NASCAR races there. Again, don't know. You can correct me in the comments if I'm completely wrong. But like I said before, KCK is an attractive place to live, at least according to the price points. I actually own a property right on State Street right here. It's a rental property, and it's actually growing. The rents are actually going up year over year. So I'm really pleased with my investment in KCK. If you want to get more into the rural areas of KCK, you have a lot of areas out here that in terms of crime, it's going to be a little bit less than when you get closer to the city. However, you can also find areas where you can find maybe 1 or 2 acres way out here as well. So that's KCK for you. But before we get to the next area, I wanted to tell you how I came up with this list. So this data is based on Q2 of the Kansas City metro housing market. I looked up all the stats and compiled this list for you, comparing year over year, because that's what we do in real estate. We compare this year to what happened last year. So basically, this is April, May, and June of this year, 2024, compared to April, May, and June of the same time period in 2023, so that you can see how much the Kansas City housing market has grown year over year. Now, if you're looking at these other lists, I do this once a quarter just to make sure that you know the current housing market trends and data. And of course, some of these things are going to change. Some of these areas that were actually on the most rapidly depreciating list based on quarter one of 2022, based on the stats of quarter one of 2024, are actually on this list as a fast growing area. So this just goes to show you that you need professional help if you're going to navigate this real estate market, and we would love to provide that for you. 816-4-MOVE-KC is our number to get a hold of myself and our team here in Kansas City. We would love to help relocate you here right to the Kansas City metro. Any one of these places on this list or off this list, we would love to help you. 816-4-MOVE-KC. Call, text, or email us. We promise we will get back to you within the day. Now, speaking of an area that was on the exact opposite list, comparing quarter one of 2024 to quarter one of 2023, when you take the quarter two stats, Raymore, Missouri is actually the 9th best place to buy a home in Kansas City metro area. Now, I think I have an explanation for why Raymore is now on the list of rapidly appreciating areas, and in quarter one, it was on the list of rapidly depreciating areas, is because recently there has just been legislation to block a landfill that would have been put in on the northernmost side of Raymore, Missouri. So a lot of people voted against it. They did not want it there, particularly because of this reason, that it would lower their property values, and it would lower Raymore as a desirable area to live in the Kansas City metro. So they said, look, we do not want this landfill here. The legislation was just passed, finalized in May of 2024. I think it was passed in April, and so there will be no landfill on the corner of Raymore and Lee Summit. And so that's why I think that this area is now on this exact opposite list of an area that is growing in quarter two of 2024. In Raymore, the median home price in 2023 for April and June, from April through June, was $347,500, and it jumped all the way to $380,000 this year. That's a 9% increase. The average price point of $375,000, comparing the same time period last year to this year, now it's up $421,000. That's a 12.3% increase. If you take those two numbers, Raymore has increased in quarter two of 2024 by 10.84%, which is a great return on your investment if you were to buy last year and needed to sell this year. Let's take a look at where Raymore is on a map. So we were just up here in Kansas City, Kansas, and we're going to head down to Raymore. It's this little area right here below Grandview, below Kansas City, Missouri proper. And in a lot of these suburbs in Raymore, you have a lot of homes that were built in the early 2000s, homes that are being built today. There's new construction in Raymore happening right now. Let's find just a street in Raymore, drop ourselves down there, and let's just see what we can see. This is a typical street in Raymore, pretty quiet, pretty standard. This area, I would estimate the homes are being built in the 1970s to the 1980s. Probably a 3 or 4 bedroom there, kind of a raised ranch, if you will. Most of the single level living here. You also have one of the nicest golf courses in the Kansas City metro area, which is Creekmore, which is located right down in Raymore. Another super attractive area. One of the knocks with Raymore is that there's not a ton of things to do out here. If you want to head to downtown Kansas City, then it's going to be kind of a drive. This is the 49 that turns into the 71. That's basically how you're going to get into downtown Kansas City. But you can see that there's a ton of growth happening in Raymore based on these stats. So it's not a bad place to invest and buy a home. But you can also see that the housing market is volatile. Like I said before, Raymore was on our list for places that lost value in quarter one of 2024. But if you just compare the stats of quarter two, it's on the top 10 list. Let's turn to area number 8. Area number 8 is Leavenworth, Kansas. Unlike Raymore, Leavenworth was on our list in quarter one of 2024 which indicates continued strong growth in the Leavenworth housing market. Now, I found this review that I think very well sums up why Leavenworth is an attractive area and why people are moving to Leavenworth. This is a review that I found on niche.com. It says, "We moved to Leavenworth because of the U.S. Army. We have been here a year now, and this is the best little town that's ever been by a military base. It is so cute and quaint and has some of the best thrift and antique stores around. We are very happy here, and it is very safe. We know many people who moved here with the military and loved it so much that they stayed." When you have a lot of people who are moving here because of the military base, if you don't know, Fort Leavenworth is in Leavenworth, Kansas. A lot of people move there because they're stationed there. They find that Leavenworth is a charming place, and they say, hey, if we get a chance to settle down, why not settle down in Leavenworth? There's also a penitentiary up there. There's a prison. And there's a lot of people moving up there in order to take those jobs as well. So while you may not want to live next to a penitentiary or prison, what you don't want to underestimate is the fact that it does provide a lot of stable and secure jobs for a lot of people who are moving up there. In Leavenworth, we toured a home that was like built in the 1880s. That may not be your cup of tea, because a home that's built in the 1880s will certainly have its own quirks, features, and problems. But if you want a historic old Victorian home, Leavenworth, Kansas is not a bad place to look. Let me show you exactly where Leavenworth is on the map. So let's just take a quick jaunt up here. Leavenworth is going to be right here. It is going to be located in Leavenworth County. And you can see it is on the Kansas side. One knock I've heard about Leavenworth is that it is harder to get. You see that these yellow lines obviously indicate interstates. There's really no easy way to get to Leavenworth. When I go to Leavenworth, I typically have to take this. This is the 152. And you come over here, and then you cross the river, and you get into Leavenworth kind of this way. Or sometimes you have to drive up this way. So it is kind of tough. Another way that you could get there is go down the 70, come up here into Leavenworth that way. But you've got a lot of, like I said, historic houses in Leavenworth, and a lot of people who are wanting to move there right now. So you do have a lot of growth. Going back to Missouri for number 7, we have Gladstone. And I know a ton about Gladstone because I used to live there. We have now lived in the Midtown area for 2 years, but before, when we first initially moved to Kansas City, we bought a home in Gladstone, Missouri, and we couldn't have been happier there. It was a little bit quiet for our pace of life. We wanted to do a lot of things downtown, but Gladstone is a safe, quiet suburb with excellent schools. There are a lot of people who are wanting to move there, and of course, me having lived there and still own that house as a rental, I am super glad to see that Gladstone, Missouri still has a pretty strong market. One weird thing about Gladstone is that it is a town that is completely surrounded by Kansas City, Missouri on all sides. I recently found out a very interesting fact about Gladstone. If you come right down here, there is a Home Depot right here. You can see it's in Gladstone city limits. I recently found out that there's a city ordinance that prevents this Home Depot from opening at 6 a.m. like all the other Home Depots in the metro area. I don't know if that's true or not. Somebody told me, but you can see the weird shape of Gladstone. It kind of comes down here all the way down. So when you're driving up Highway 29, you actually drive through Gladstone for probably 10 seconds before you get out of this area. Gladstone extends all the way down here, but then up here you're like completely surrounded by Gladstone, but you're not in Gladstone. So it is a funky shaped area. The rest of this is completely surrounded by Kansas City. We used to live right off of here, Antioch right here, and 72nd right here. Again, really liked it. The only negative was that it took a little bit to get to the highways. You can see this is Antioch. You come all the way down here. Also full of cops as well. So if you drive up the one, be careful. Don't speed, because you will probably get pulled over if they can catch you. We recently spent 4th of July 2024 up at a friend's house in Gladstone, and this niche.com review of Gladstone is actually, I think, very accurate given somebody who's lived there. Overall experience is very good, great. Gladstone is a great location off of major interstate I-35 to reach downtown Kansas City, as well as the other areas of the metro, in generally less than 30 to 45 minutes. Geographically bound on all sides by Kansas City, its growth potential is seemingly limited. It lacks a walkable main street or quaint downtown area, possibly due to missed opportunities in city planning decades ago, as compared to adjacent areas that have experienced both housing and economic upward trends. That being said, the city more than makes up for any perceived missed opportunities for big box store tax dollars with qualities that families and businesses need. A massively quick response time for emergency services, great public works, and fantastic community services and partnerships. The Gladstone Pool is one of our favorite pools in the area, and before we set off fireworks this 4th of July, we spent time going to the Gladstone Pool. It was uncrowded, given it was the 4th of July. It was clean. It was family friendly. Our kids had a great time. They cried a little bit because they weren't used to swimming around, so we have to rectify that. But they're super interested now in swimming. They wear goggles everywhere for some reason. So we will probably head back to the Gladstone Pool or a pool. It's about 20-25 minutes away from us, especially if we're just hanging out with friends. So the median price point of houses has increased from $240,000 to $281,000, which is a whopping 17% increase. And the average price point has increased from $258,000 to $279,000, which is an 8.17% increase. Combine those two numbers and you get a 12.62% increase in the Gladstone housing market. Number 6 is our highest price point area on this list, and that is Fairway, Kansas. It is a very elite, high-class, high-price point suburb just north of Prairie Village and just north of Leawood and Overland Park. It's an excellent location if you want to live on the Kansas side, you got some money to spend, you want to be near downtown, midtown, and all those other things, all those other attractions. Fairway, Kansas is going to be an area that you are going to want to look into. You are not going to get in there for probably any less than $400,000 on the low end, and even then you're probably only getting a 2 to 3 bedroom house if you buy in Fairway. You can easily spend over $1 million to get a house in Fairway. Close to 2 country clubs that I haven't gotten invited to play yet. So if you live in Fairway, would love to meet you and play one of the country clubs that are right next to you if you are a member there. It's members only. It's also within kind of close walking distance to Loose Park. I have to tell you a story about people living in Fairway that will kind of illustrate part of the desirability there. When my wife and I first moved here, we were driving around the area and we were going on our date. I think it was for our anniversary. And so we are driving through Fairway, admiring all these beautiful houses in the area, and we see this kid kind of on the side of the road. It was pretty clear that he had just fallen off his bike. I think he was probably 8 or 9 years old, pretty young. And so we pulled over and just asked him, hey, what was wrong? And he said, look, I was biking down to this, I think it was a tennis club. I was biking down to this tennis club and I wrecked and I scraped up my knee really bad. And so we said, hey, kid, we can take you to the tennis club if you can't ride your bike. It's both of us here, but we want you to call your mom to make sure that she's okay with us just, driving you down the street in our car. So we called her and she was like, yeah, totally fine. We dropped him off at the tennis club. Never really saw him again. Hope he's okay. But I think that illustrates a lot of the attraction of Fairview is that parents can easily just trust their kids to go out and about, bike from the house to the tennis club. I don't know if he was coming from home. We just, only had like a 3-minute car ride with him, but it's a beautiful, safe area. I want to show you on the map. I especially want to show you some of the homes that you could get in Fairway. So we are coming into Fairway right here. You can see it's a relatively small suburb. Here's the 2 golf courses that I told you about, Kansas City Country Club, and I think it's the Mission Hills Country Club. I might be wrong about that. We were right here-ish when we saw this kid kind of eat it. So you can see it's a well-established neighborhood. You got large trees, really quaint little kind of cottage-style houses. These houses are probably worth, at least $600,000, if not more. Let's pop into a different area of Fairway, and let's see if we can find something that's even more high price point. Okay, so you can see this modern home right here was probably one of these homes that was completely torn down and rebuilt from the ground up. You've got this really kind of square angular shape, which if you are not a fan of, then you're not a fan of. But a lot of these builds are going in Fairway because it is a super desirable neighborhood. It's a very desirable area to live in Kansas City. You can see that it is very close to Country Club Plaza here and also downtown here. So you get the best of both worlds. You get to live in a little quaint small town, but also you don't have to feel isolated at all. Here's a review from a current resident in Fairway. They say, if you live in the triangle part of Fairway, you get everything. If you live elsewhere in Fairway, you basically still get everything. Everyone is just a good person here, and no complaints much from them. Everywhere you go, everyone is extremely friendly, even some of the seniors, because lots of senior citizens live in the triangle, and not much crime happens in this area. Minutes away from wonderful locations such as Plaza, some, for now, marijuana shops in Casey, Missouri, Joe's Barbecue in KCK, among so many other places. Even the La Jolla of Kansas being Mission Hills. Very plentiful locations, and I have nothing to complain about except for the fact no mountains like Estes Parks or beaches like La Jolla's are near, because those would be magical and would just make my life much better. That way we'd really get more weed for the pros like me, haha. Okay, so this person comparing Fairway or comparing Mission Hills to La Jolla, I would definitely agree with that. If you're from California and you know La Jolla, it's a very elite area. But Fairway is also going to be an area that you can get into for, again, it's going to be the most expensive area on this list, growing from $575,000, which is the median price point last year in 2023, to $625,000. That's an 8% increase. And then on average price point, you have $649,000, growing all the way to $762,000, which is a huge 17% increase. You combine those two numbers, that's a 13.08% increase. If you combine the average and median increase of Fairway, Kansas, you've got a lot of growth there. And again, it's a beautiful area. Not surprised at all. Number 5, I would say, is probably one of the more surprising ones on this list, and that is Edwardsville, Kansas. When you go out to Edwardsville, it is an area in Wyandotte County. If you don't know what Wyandotte County is, Kansas City, Kansas, which was our number 10 area, is located in Wyandotte County, and so is Edwardsville. So getting out there is not necessarily the best. If you go out to Edwardsville, you are going to have to drive through some pretty commercial-looking industrial areas. In fact, let me find the road out to Edwardsville, or one of the roads out to Edwardsville, in order to show you what I mean. So Edwardsville is out here, and it does kind of feel out there. When you're driving on these roads here, right next to the Kansas and Missouri River, a lot of what you see when you're driving out there is this kind of sparsely populated, kind of more industrial areas in Edwardsville. This is a very common, typical drive that you would take to get out to Edwardsville. There's really not much out there, and you would be saying out there, so when you're driving out there, you might be saying, hey, where am I going? Why am I out here? But if you make it out there, you'll find these suburban areas that are populated kind of like this. Houses built in the 1950s to 1960s that want a little bit of a country feel, but still want to be close to the metro. Edwardsville is also close to the Legends outlets that we talked about before with Kansas Speedway and all of those attractive areas there. You go straight up to from Edwardsville. A lot of Edwardsville is bordering the Legends outlets. So there's not only a ton of growth in Kansas City, Kansas and Wyandotte County, but there's also growth in Edwardsville, number 5 on our list. In Edwardsville, you can also find areas with a ton of land if that's what you wish, but the median price point in Edwardsville has grown from $315,000 to $325,000, which is a modest 3.17% increase, but the average price point has jumped way up from $313,000 to $388,000, which is a 23, almost 24% increase. Now, if you don't know the difference between median and average price point, it's this. The median is basically the middle number given a set of data. The average is taking that whole set of data and just basically taking an average. So average is more prone to a lot of high and low numbers affecting it, and median is just basically the middle number. It doesn't matter how many high or low numbers there are, you're taking the number that is completely in the middle. A lot of people like to use median, but I also think average can be helpful because it shows you whether or not there are a lot of high price point homes in the area, which I think why the average in Edwardsville has gone up so much is a common trend that we're seeing in the Kansas City market, where people want a lot of land and nice properties on a lot of land, and so they're going to be spending $500,000, $600,000, $700,000 in some of these more rural areas in order to get a little bit farther away from the city to get maybe 2 or 3 acres, but still be close enough to enjoy all the amenities that Kansas City has to offer. So for number 4, we're staying in Kansas and we're looking at Mission, Kansas. Mission is one place that was on our list in quarter 1 that also stays on our list for quarter 2, and I'm beginning to think that it is not an anomaly. Mission is right next to Fairway, Kansas. So let's look on a map. So you can see Mission located right here. It's going to be lower price point than Fairway, a little bit farther out from the metro, from the center of the metro, from downtown, than Fairway is. But what Mission strikes is a good blend of affordability, but also you get all the accoutrements of being close enough to the metro. One of the areas that I'm surprised I haven't seen on this area is Roland Park, but maybe in future lists we're going to see it pop up. But Mission, there's not that many homes in Mission, but let's see. 1950s, 1960s builds, I would think, are going to be very common in this area. Yep, you see a whole bunch of ranch style houses, 2 to 3 to maybe 4 beds. Here's a little cute brick one right here. You've got more ranch style houses, and you have all the benefits of being in Johnson County, which are good schools. You have good school systems. You not only have good school systems, but you also are close to the metro. You're also close to this IKEA right here. This Miriam Shopping Center is where the IKEA is. I have been called a few times, and people have specifically asked to live near the IKEA. I don't know what you people are doing out there going to IKEA that much, but if that's your jam, then the IKEA is like right here. Antioch Park is also a fantastic park that's actually in Miriam, not in Mission, but in Mission, home prices have jumped up. So let's look at the stats for Mission. So with Mission, the median price point of home increased from $280,000, it jumped all the way up to $350,000. The average price point jumped from $343,000 to $357,000, which is a 24% increase for the median, 4% increase for the average. You combine those two numbers, you get 14.35% increase in Mission, Kansas. Niche.com ranks Mission as the #1 best suburb for a young professional, the #5 best places for young professionals in Kansas. I don't know what the difference between suburb and place but Niche.com says that. And this is one of the things that Niche.com has that I actually really do agree with them. If you are a young professional and you want a place where you can raise your kids in a good school district, a relatively safe place, but also affordable, Mission is going to be at the top of your list. Another area that I might consider is right next to it, Shawnee. I would also consider Miriam. All of those areas are going to be great, attractive areas that are going to be good areas for you to invest in if you are a young professional and you want to start a family there, or even if you just want to start your home ownership journey there. Number 3 is, okay, so listen carefully to number 3 because it can be kind of confusing. Number 3 is North Kansas City, Missouri. Okay, so let me show you on a map exactly what I mean, because you might hear like things like the Northland, Kansas City North, North Kansas City. What are all those differences, and what are all those things? What are all those areas referring to? It's a little bit different, and so when you come here to live in Kansas City, you're going to want to know where the Northland is. So the Northland is referred to kind of locally as anything above the Missouri River on the Missouri side. So Parkville is in the Northland, Weatherby Lake, all this area, Liberty. I mean, I would even throw in Excelsior Springs. Okay, we're going to talk about what constitutes, in the metro and out of the metro a little bit later. But anywhere in the Northland, when somebody says, "Hey, I want to live anywhere in the Northland," I would consider this whole area right here. I would also consider this area as Kansas City North. I've heard of this. I've heard of people talk about, below the river as Kansas City South, above the river as Kansas City North. If you click on Kansas City, you can see that there are areas that also span into the Northland. But this area that I'm talking about is actually right here. So you can zoom in and you can see it's completely surrounded by Kansas City, just like Gladstone, but it is not Kansas City. It is North Kansas City. And most of it you can see right here is all industrial. So I'm just going to drop you in here, okay? Let's go to this random place. I'll bet you it's going to be some very commercial looking area. And yep, you got it. Okay, you got warehouses, you got parking lots, and you might say, well, what is driving up the house prices in North Kansas City? And that's a great question. I think I can explain it. So let's zoom back out and see. Most of all the living in North Kansas City is right here. So I want to caveat this with the fact that there's not that much data to go off of, but North Kansas City, the houses here have increased quite a bit. So these houses here, estimate built in the anywhere in the 1950s to 1960s. Some are a little bit older, I would imagine too. But this is going to be the standard house in North Kansas City, a small kind of ranch style house, and there are whole rows of them up here. Now, what makes these attractive? You might not think these homes are attractive at all. What makes these attractive is they're super close to a cute little downtown area. So I'm going to drop us down on Armour Road here, and we are going to see, oops, I missed Armour Road, so we're going to go a little bit up. Okay, so I'm going to drop us off here on Armour Road. Yes, this is definitely Armour Road. And you go down here, and you've got a really cool, kind of cute old town, downtown area. I guess this is, considered downtown North Kansas City, but this is a really, brick shops, small shopping center here on Armour Road. But if you zoom out a little bit, you'll see the attractiveness of being in North Kansas City. You are basically smack dab in the middle of everything. You have, the Northland up to your north. You have Kansas City, you have South Kansas City down to your south right here. Downtown is probably only at most a 7 to 10 minute drive from North Kansas City. So you've got great school systems. You've got a hospital here that employs a lot of people that work and live in North Kansas City. I listed a home in North Kansas City about 2 years ago. I think it was the fastest home I've ever sold. Within hours, it was gone. We put it up in the morning. It was gone by the afternoon. Somebody called, took it way over asking, waived inspections and everything. And that's kind of what you can expect in North Kansas City. Maybe not right now because it's a way different market than last year, but not a lot of homes come for sale in North Kansas City. So let's look at the stats. So the stats are the median price point of homes increased from 280,000 in 2023 to 350,000, which is a 26% jump. Again, this is only a small limited amount of sales, so take this with a grain of salt. On average, the homes have increased from a $285,000 average price point in 2023 to a $331,000 price point average in 2024. That's a 15% increase. Combine those two numbers, you get a 21% increase from 2022 to 2023. Another fun thing to do in North Kansas City is the rabbit hole. If you haven't watched our kids vlog, we took our kids to the rabbit hole, which is a kind of like literature museum. I guess that's the best way to describe it. Our kids loved it, had a great time. You can check that out if you haven't yet. So moving to number 2, you're never going to guess the other two because we have never talked about either of these places in the channel before. I've only sold one home in these two areas, and this might be a little bit controversial because you may not consider these areas as part of the Kansas City Metro. But before we get there, I kind of want to talk about that because sometimes people comment on the channel and say, well, that's not part of the Kansas City Metro. Well, I'm just basically going off the stats that I have available to me in the MLS, which is the multiple listing service, and looking at all the different areas that are kind of covered there, not all the way out to St. Joe or Lawrence, but trying to keep it in the Kansas City Metro. And the way I define that is if Google says it's in the Kansas City Metro, I will define it as a Kansas City Metro too, even though some of these areas are getting kind of far out there, because this channel is mainly for people who are relocating here. If you're wanting to relocate here, again, give us a call if you're wanting to relocate to anywhere in the Kansas City Metro, Kansas or Missouri. But if Google says it's in the Kansas City Metro, I would have to assume that somebody who is just exploring Kansas City is not going to know the difference between some of these areas, and they're going to need a guide. So if Google says it, then I'm going to just include it. And maybe I'm wrong, and if you think I'm wrong, drop a comment down below in how I can be better. But I think that if Google includes it in the Kansas City Metro in their definition, then I'm going to include it as well. So the number 2 spot is Odessa, Missouri. Odessa is way out there. It's about 30 minutes from the center of downtown Kansas City. It takes me about 30 minutes, maybe 35 minutes to get there in my house. I sold somebody a house in Odessa, I think it was a year ago. They wanted to move out there to be closer to their grandkids. And so let's look at Odessa on a map, and you can decide whether or not I'm right in including it. So you can see Odessa is way out here. The reason that I would argue that it can be included is because it is right off the 70 freeway. And yes, I know that I'm from California, and so I say the 70, and a lot of people don't. So old habits die hard. It is off of Interstate 70, and it's a small town of probably about 5,000 people, I would imagine, is going to be Odessa out here. So there's a high school, there's a shopping center, probably like with one convenience store or shop, and then you've got these homes that are built again in the 1940s. I would imagine 19 to 1970s are going to be homes that are built in Odessa, and there's truly not much going on out here. Not to knock it, but apparently there's enough going on that a lot of people do want to buy houses out here in Odessa, Missouri. So let me turn to the stats. In Odessa, it has the biggest median price point increase on our entire list. Last year, from April through June of 2023, the median price point home was $255,000. This year, in 2024, the median price point home is $336,000. That's almost a $100,000 jump, and that is a 31.6% increase. On average, homes in Odessa have increased from $323,000 to $358,000, which is still a 10% increase. Combine those two numbers and you have a 21.38% increase in Odessa. Let me look at this review on niche.com about Odessa, and I think this is a very accurate view. It's a very nice little town with loads of small businesses to support. It feels safe without being sleepy, and it's very close to get to other places so that you do not feel as if you're trapped in the middle of nowhere. Again, with I-70 being so close, running right through Odessa, it is going to be very easy for you to get back into the the downtown area of Kansas City if that's kind of where you want to go. Getting to area number 1 is Buckner, Missouri. Again, you may comment below saying, hey, Buckner's not in the metro, Odessa's not in the metro, but again, here's my argument. Wikipedia, Google says they're in the metro, so somebody brand new to Kansas City is probably going to assume that they're in the metro going off of the readily available information. And number 2, there was a time when areas like Liberty or Kearney were not necessarily considered like in the metro, but Kansas City has expanded so much that those areas are definitely squarely in the metro now. So these areas, I would assume that as Kansas City continues to expand, these areas are going to get less and less and more densely populated, because as they continue to build and push out, commercial is going to start going in there. There's going to be more residential construction going out in there. So that's my prediction. In 5 years, these areas are going to be squarely in the Kansas City metro. So let's look at where Buckner is located. And again, Buckner is a surprise because I could see Odessa being right off 70 freeway, but you have Buckner, and it's way up here. And there's no easy way to get to Buckner, and really not that much to do. I'm going to be honest with you. The last time I traveled into Buckner, I took this. I don't even know what street this is, to be honest with you. Let's see what it says. But when you're driving out to Buckner, it kind of feels like you're driving out in the middle of nowhere. It feels like a farm, and there are a lot of farms out here near Buckner. But yeah, this is Highway 24. Yeah, didn't even know that. But the stats don't lie, and let me show you the stats. So Buckner, Missouri went from $209,000 in terms of median price point in 2023, jumped 10%, close to 10% to $228,000. But the average price point, again, average indicates that there's a lot of high price point houses going, or high price point properties that are being sold in that area. It's taken the biggest average price point jump from $217,000 to $294,000 in 2024. That's a 35.72% increase. You combine those two numbers, that's a 22% increase in Buckner, Missouri. So again, an area that we've never talked about before in the metro, never sold a home in Buckner. What are your thoughts? Why do you think these areas like Odessa and Buckner are growing so much when you have these areas that you would expect to be on the list like Overland Park, maybe Liberty, and these other areas? Why do you think they're not on the list? Comment below, and YouTube also thinks that you're going to like this video here.